Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I, 35M, have a younger brother, Derek, 29M, who had a difficult birth due to complications and spent 6 weeks in the NICU. Because of this traumatic start, my parents have always treated him like he could do no wrong, often at the expense of my sister Rachel, 32F, and me. Derek has always basked in this special treatment and has made a habit of stealing the spotlight at family events. "You know how Derek is," my mom would always say, brushing off our complaints. "He just gets excited and wants to share his joy." This constant favoritism has created a rift between Derek and the rest of us siblings, as well as tensions with our parents. Things got worse when Derek started dating Emma, 24F, who seemed to share his need for attention. At Rachel's baby shower last spring, Emma suddenly stood up and announced her own pregnancy. "I just couldn't wait to share our blessing," she had exclaimed while Rachel sat there, fighting back tears during what should have been her special day. When I proposed to my now wife, Sarah, 30F, I wanted to avoid the drama and suggested eloping. Sarah, however, really wanted a traditional wedding with both our families present. So, reluctantly, I invited my family. During the rehearsal dinner, my best man, Mike, 35M, noticed a jewelry store receipt falling from Derek's pocket. When Mike confronted him, Derek got defensive. "Mind your own business," Derek had snapped. "What I do with my money isn't your concern." Mike told me everything, and I immediately confronted Derek. "You're not going to be a groomsman anymore," I told him firmly. "I know you're planning to propose at my wedding." Derek ran to our parents, crying about how unfair I was being. "He's just jealous," he sobbed. "I wouldn't do that to him." My parents tried to mediate, but I stood my ground. Remember Rachel's graduation? Or Cousin Tom's retirement party? Or even my med school graduation? I listed off all the times Derek had made events about himself. They couldn't deny his track record, but still insisted I was being harsh. Derek promised not to do anything during the wedding, but I didn't trust him. "Try anything," I warned, "and you'll regret it." Sure enough, during Sarah's father-daughter dance, Derek got down on one knee in the middle of the dance floor, making sure everyone could see him propose to Emma. That's when my revenge plan kicked in. Mike and I had hired an actress to play Derek's supposed mistress. She confronted Derek and Emma during the reception, claiming she was carrying his baby. "How could you do this to me?" she cried convincingly. "You said you loved me." When Derek denied everything, she called his phone. I had given her his number and planted some suspicious texts. Emma took one look at his phone, threw the ring at him, and stormed out in tears. Seeing Derek's world crumbling, I couldn't help but smirk. He caught my expression and immediately knew I was behind it. I ignored all communication from him and our parents until after the honeymoon. Now Emma has thrown Derek out and won't let him see their child. He's been bombarding me with messages. "You have to tell Emma the truth! This isn't fair!" I responded with just 2 things. A text saying, "What are you talking about?" and a screenshot of our wedding bill with a message suggesting he owed me half the costs for ruining the day. Sarah knew about my plan and supported it after Derek ruined her dance with her father, but now even Rachel thinks I might have gone too far. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Let me tell you about how Karen from my homeowner association tried to shut down my small cafe business, only to learn a harsh lesson about making assumptions and trying to enforce rules that don't exist. This all went down over the course of about 6 months, and looking back, I still can't believe the audacity of this woman. I'm a 32-year-old woman who's always dreamed of running my own cafe. After working as a barista for over a decade and saving every penny I could, I finally had enough money to buy a small commercial property in a mixed-use development. The area has both residential and commercial spaces with small businesses on the ground floor and condos above. It's governed by a homeowner association, but the commercial spaces have different rules than the residential units. I did my due diligence before purchasing. I reviewed all the bylaws, got the necessary permits, and made sure everything was in order. The previous owner had run a successful cafe here for 15 years before retiring, so I knew it was zoned properly for my business. The cafe itself is nothing fancy, just a cozy little place with amazing coffee, fresh pastries, and a loyal customer base. I kept most of the previous owner's staff and maintained the warm, welcoming atmosphere that made it special. We're open from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., serving breakfast and lunch along with coffee and treats. Everything was going great for the first few months until Karen moved into one of the condos above the cafe. She was elected to the homeowner association board almost immediately. Apparently nobody else wanted the position, and that's when my troubles began. It started with little things. She'd come in every morning, order a complicated drink, and then complain it wasn't made correctly. She'd demand remakes and refunds, but I always remained professional. However, I noticed her taking photos of my cafe and making notes on her phone. One morning, as I was opening up, Karen marched in with a stack of papers. "I need to speak to the owner," she demanded, tapping her foot impatiently. "That would be me," I replied, continuing to set up the espresso machine. She looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "You? You're just the barista." "I'm both the owner and the main barista," I explained calmly. "How can I help you?" "Well," she huffed, shuffling through her papers, "as a member of the Homeowner Association Board, I'm here to inform you that you're in violation of several Homeowner Association rules. You'll need to cease operations immediately." I was stunned. "Excuse me? What violations?" She thrust a paper at me. "First, commercial operations are not permitted in this building without board approval. Second, your operating hours violate quiet hours. Third, the smell of coffee is a nuisance to residents. Fourth," I cut her off, "I'm going to stop you right there. This is a mixed-use development with designated commercial spaces. My business is properly zoned and permitted. The Homeowner Association has no authority to shut me down." "Don't tell me what the Homeowner Association can and cannot do," she snapped. "I'm giving you 48 hours to close your business or you'll face fines and legal action." I remained calm but firm. "Karen, I have all the proper documentation showing my right to operate here. The commercial spaces are governed by different rules than the residential units. You're welcome to review my paperwork." "The rules have changed," she declared. "The board voted last night. No more businesses without explicit board approval, which you don't have." This was news to me, and I was pretty sure she was lying. "May I see the minutes from this board meeting?" She flushed slightly. "They're not ready yet, but the vote was unanimous." "Well, until I receive official notification of any rule changes, along with proof that they were properly voted on and implemented according to Homeowner Association bylaws, I'll continue operating as usual." Karen's face turned red. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." Over the next few weeks, Karen escalated her campaign against my cafe. She filed daily complaints about noise, we weren't noisy, smells, we had proper ventilation, and supposed health code violations, we passed every inspection with flying colors. She tried to turn other residents against me, but most of them were regular customers who loved having a cafe downstairs. She started standing outside with a sign warning people about unauthorized businesses and health hazards. When that didn't work, she began approaching customers directly, telling them they were trespassing and threatening to call the police. I documented everything and consulted with my lawyer, who confirmed I was completely within my rights to operate. He advised me to keep detailed records of all interactions with Karen and any impact on my business. The situation came to a head when Karen attempted to physically block my delivery driver from bringing in supplies one morning. I had to call the police, who informed her she was the one breaking the law by interfering with a legitimate business. That afternoon, I received an official-looking letter from the Homeowner Association Board, clearly written by Karen, demanding I pay $5,000 in fines for various violations and cease operations within 24 hours. The letter was full of grammatical errors and only signed by Karen. I decided it was time to take action. I contacted the other board members directly and requested an emergency meeting to address the situation. To Karen's surprise, they all agreed to meet. The meeting was eye-opening for everyone involved. It turned out Karen had been acting completely on her own, without board approval. She'd never called any legitimate meetings or votes. The other board members were horrified by her behavior. "Karen," the board president said sternly, "you have no authority to make these demands or issue fines. The commercial spaces are explicitly permitted in our bylaws, and this cafe has been here for almost 2 decades. But the smell," Karen started. "The smell of fresh coffee is one of the reasons I bought my condo," another board member interrupted. "And I'm not the only one who feels that way." I presented my documentation, including records of Karen's harassment and the impact on my business. The board was appalled. "Furthermore," I added, "I've consulted with my lawyer and we're prepared to file a lawsuit for harassment and interference with business operations if this continues." The board president turned to Karen. "This stops now. If you continue this behavior, you'll be removed from the board and face legal consequences." Karen stormed out of the meeting, but her campaign against my cafe didn't end there. She started posting negative reviews online using fake names, but she wasn't very clever about it. They were all written in her distinctive style, with the same grammatical errors as her letter. I had enough evidence to move forward with legal action, but I decided to give her one last chance to back down. I had my lawyer send her a cease and desist letter, detailing all her actions and the potential consequences if she continued. Instead of backing down, Karen decided to sue me, claiming my business was causing her emotional distress and reducing property values. She represented herself in court, which turned out to be a massive mistake. The judge was not impressed with Karen's evidence, which consisted mainly of her personal complaints and some poorly photoshopped pictures allegedly showing health code violations. My documentation, on the other hand, was thorough and professional. Mrs. Thompson, the judge addressed Karen, not only do you have no legal basis for your complaints, but your actions constitute harassment and potential defamation. The defendant has provided clear evidence that their business is properly licensed and permitted, and that you have repeatedly interfered with their legitimate operations. Karen tried to interrupt, but the judge shut her down. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm particularly troubled by your abuse of your homeowner association board position and your attempts to enforce non-existent rules. This court finds in favor of the defendant. The judge not only dismissed Karen's case, but also granted my countersuit. Karen was ordered to pay damages for her harassment campaign and was permanently enjoined from interfering with my business operations. The aftermath was satisfying. Karen was removed from the homeowner association board and ended up selling her condo and moving away. My business actually improved after all this. The local paper ran a story about the case, and people came from all over town to support us. I used some of the settlement money to renovate the cafe's outdoor seating area, making it even more welcoming for our community. We now host monthly homeowner association meetings there, with complimentary coffee, of course, and the new board is much more reasonable to work with. The best part? The condo Karen sold was bought by a lovely retired couple who come down every morning for coffee and pastries. They always tell me how much they love the smell of fresh coffee wafting up to their unit. Looking back, I learned some valuable lessons about standing up for yourself and doing things the right way. I'm glad I kept detailed records and handled everything professionally, even when Karen was at her worst. It would have been easy to lose my temper or stoop to her level, but staying calm and letting the legal system work proved to be the best revenge. Today, my cafe is thriving. We've even expanded our menu and hired more staff to keep up with demand. Sometimes customers ask about the Karen incident, and we all have a good laugh about it. I even created a special drink called the Karen. It's a complicated high-maintenance beverage that nobody ever orders, but it stays on the menu as a reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with difficult people is to keep your cool and let them dig their own hole. The whole experience taught me that while you can't control how others behave, you can control how you respond to them. By staying professional and documenting everything, I was able to protect my business and my dream. And in the end, that's what matters most. As for Karen, last I heard, she tried to pull similar stunts in her new neighborhood, but quickly found out that her reputation had preceded her. Sometimes karma really does come full circle, especially in the age of social media and public records. I still have all the documentation from the case stored away, including Karen's hilariously awful official homeowner association letters. Sometimes when I'm having a rough day, I pull them out and remind myself of how far we've come. It's a good reminder that no matter how difficult things get, staying true to your principles and fighting for what's right is always worth it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go make some coffee. The morning rush is about to start, and unlike Karen, my regular customers actually appreciate a well-made latte. The next one is a petty revenge story. So this story takes place many years ago. In the big box home improvement store I worked at, I truly made myself a jack of all trades and then spend some time helping out as a cashier. Credit card culture wasn't much different beast that it is today. No slick point of sale systems that you can just tap your payment against, and smartphones didn't even exist yet. You just handed your credit card to the cashier, they swiped it on their keyboard, and after you signed the slip, you got your credit card back. At this point, it was technically expected that the cashier would compare the signature to verify that you were dealing with the authorized user. That lets me frank most wage slaves did not, but I was always a little bit more go above and beyond, was concerned about that security, and I actually wrote CID on my own cards and was more than happy to display my ID at the time to prevent myself from being taken advantage of, and so I gave that same consideration to my customers. One day, a particular customer decided to be a smartass. I was doing my check on the signatures. Now, this check never took a long time. It's basically 3 to 5 seconds of looking for, characteristics. Big loops here, squiggles here, crosses the T in the same ways, just a few quick basics. You see a few matching characteristics, call it a day, and move on. But this dude, bro, was not happy with this. So he decides to throw out the line, "What do you think you are, some kind of cop?" Now, being the quick-witted smartass that I am, I just instantly responded with, "Nope, quit the academy after my dad got killed in the line of duty." Finished checking the signature for a second or two, handed the card and the receipt back to the customer and wished him a nice day, enjoying the embarrassed, red-faced expression as he silently sulked out of the store. Now I started ringing up the next customer, and the rest of my line was silent, and as soon as I saw the guy clear the doors and they closed behind him in my peripheral, I let the rest of the line know. "Dad's a mechanic. He's fine. We had lunch last week." and got a few relieved breaths and the occasional chuckle. Nothing too serious, but it still felt good, making the guy regret his obnoxiousness. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Short and fun story. Recent story in the last few months. One-time thing, so far. Preface. My father and I share horrible handwriting. I have really cruddy cursive. My dad's can be worse, and so he'll write in print. So one of the more recent cursive mixed print written times involving a grocery list where I made a funny. Okay, it was a prank story. I was at the store with this badly written grocery list. My dad was nice enough to break the list down into sections, so I didn't have to run department to department. So when I got to the meat department, I saw something written as cheap beet. In actuality, my father had odds are written cheap beef. Translation, go check the manager's special section for whatever is cheap. I don't care, grab it. Still, I called to double check. Me. Dad, hey, did you write cheap beets or cheap? Dad, sounding half asleep, cutting me off. Huh? What? Listen, I'm in the middle of working on something. You need to pick up whatever I put on the list. Me. But Dad, I just need to double check. Dad. Looking busy. Just either buy what I have on my list and we'll sort it out later. Cue malicious compliance. Me. Okay, Dad. I hang up and decide to have a bit of fun. First thing I do is I buy a cheaper cut in the manager special section. Cover my butt, so dinner isn't ruined. Then, when I'm in the produce section, I look for beets. Guess what? Organic is on sale. I call up Dad again. Me. Dad. How many cheap, Dad? Cuts me off. Look, either buy 2 or double or guess okay. Good God. Me. Can you at least tell me if you want organic? Dad. Yes, organically grown or grass-fed is fine. I took everything to the checkout and paid. As I waked in the house to drop off my father's groceries, he starts double-checking it. Dad. Hey, where's the... Me. I finally get to cut him off. Right here. I hand Dad the bag of cheap beets. Cue surprise Pikachu. Face me. You said everything on the list, and guess what? They were cheap. Dad looks at his list, sees his mistaken T for an F, and looks at his bag. Continuing surprised Pikachu face. We had a good laugh, and a few minutes later brought him the real beef. Dad admitted he was actually asleep when I called earlier, so I woke him mid-nap, half flustered and annoyed. No fallout, except I had to find an inventive way to cook beets, but thought the prank be worth it to slug through one beet dish. Though now Dad checks his list and even walks up to me and says, "It's cheap beef, son," he still laughs. The next one is an entitled people's story. I am still fuming a bit from this interaction I had the other night. So I work as a bartender in a state that's pretty strict with their drinking laws, and last call is 1 a.m. After a busy night at like 12:30, I had some guys come in. I greeted him by saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Can I grab your ID real quick?" By law, I have to check anyone's ID who comes into the bar. The dude sits down and goes, "You don't care about how I'm doing?" I paused since he said it in a super rude tone, and I at first didn't get what he was referencing, so I then just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm kinda confused. I just asked you how you were doing and if I could see your ID since..." And before I could finish my sentence, he repeated himself saying, "Well, you don't care about how I'm doing, do you?" Saying it was more aggressively. I just responded saying, "I mean, I asked you how you were doing, and I do care, but I do really need to see you ID if you're gonna be in here, since it's just the law." He then took forever to get it out, and as I'm scanning just blurts out, "You do realize how aggravating and abrasive you are being, right? You don't care how I'm doing, and what are you closing up the bar or in?" At this point, I've closed down one side, but people are still at the bar sitting and hanging out, and I then start to say, "Well, one, you came in here pretty abrasive yourself and not very nicely, and yeah, just one half of the bar back here I'm closing up. It's been busy tonight." And again, he cuts me off and says, "Well, you don't need to have a ducking attitude, and I want a ducking beer, so can you accommodate that? At least?" I was taken aback. I not only had my normal customer service voice on, I was also in a great mood when greeting this guy. I was shocked he'd still demand a drink after just rudely and loudly saying this at me. All I said was, "Our cheapest beer fine with you then?" And he grumbled, "Yeah, whatever." As I'm gonna grab the beer, he then goes, "Well, look, I'll keep my mouth shut if you keep your mouth ducking shut while I drink this beer, and maybe I'll tip you if you shut up." I didn't even set the beer down and told him, "Okay, now I'm gonna have a ducking attitude with you. Get the duck out of the bar now. If you don't, I'll have you removed." And as his sorry ass left, he just kept repeating, "Looks, there's that attitude, idiot. What's your ducking problem? I should get this beer for free at this point." The customers drinking at the bar were shocked at what he had to say, and thankfully tipped really well, and all apologized to me for even having some rando stranger talk to me like that. I am, and was lost for words over how someone could think that I'd still serve them a beer and beg for a tip after being spoken to like that. Plus, coming in before last call like that is like, dude, duck off. If you're gonna come in so late, don't be a ducking dick about it. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.